Thank you for the many beautiful comments flowing through the live chat. I'm so glad that you're deeply resonating with the song we chose for this year. Same as last year. It's just, I feel it really captures so beautifully the spirit and the vibe that we feel is alive in our growing community. So thank you also for the shared love and support and excitement about this year's summit. So now let us move into the opening presentation of this year's Quantum Soul Guidance Summit. It is an honor and joy for me to welcome Ursula O'Farrell to the stage, a radiant creative soul whose work weaves together art, galactic astrology, and channeled wisdom in ways that truly touch the heart and expand the imagination. Ursula's presentation, titled A New Dawn Rising with the Pegasus Constellation and the Year of the Fire Horse, invites us into a powerful energetic threshold as we look ahead to February 17th, 2026, when the Lunar New Year begins. We step into the momentum of the Fire Horse, a call to movement, freedom, and inspired collective action. At the heart of her work is the Pegasus constellation, a carrier of the 0-degree Aries point of creation, bridging our collective consciousness between the age of Pisces and the age of Aquarius. Through Pegasus and fire, Ursula invites us into flight, into multidimensional realms where new visions are ready to be received. Ursula brings a truly multidimensional background to this work. A double Virgo with a Pisces moon, she blends grounded creativity with visionary sensitivity. She is a professional painter whose artwork has been exhibited throughout the United States, guided throughout her life by inspiration from unseen realms. Astrology entered her life during motherhood, offering deeper understanding of family dynamics and soul patterns, and leading her into years of study in metaphysics, consciousness, and a cosmic blueprint of the soul. With her generous, caring heart, Ursula has also initiated several beautiful collaborations that have enriched our galactic astrology community from the start. She shares much of her soul guidance and galactic insights through her YouTube channel called the Ascension Playground, where her creativity and wisdom continue to inspire many. Please join me in welcoming Ursula O'Farrell as the opening speaker of the Quantum Soul Guidance Summit 2026.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to 2026. It's a brand new year filled with amazing galactic, celestial, and astrological markers. So many of the tom-toms happening within the spiritual world is basically sending us messages that now is the time. My name is Ursula O'Farrell, and I've had the delight of being a quantum soul guidance practitioner for the past 3 years. So it's a joy to join you in the second annual Global Summit on the Remembering. Part of the delight that brought me into the realms of wanting to know more about the constellations and the heavenly stars that are here to support me along my path is this idea that there's got to be more. And I know that I am more than what is in this physical incarnation. So much of what I have done and shared in the past 10 years is to really drill down on cosmic portraiture, to understanding what is the energetic frequency or signature that my soul carries. It's truly all been about this union of myself in this 3D lifetime with my higher self. In my early years, I would say that would be an understanding of myself in relationship to God outside of myself. Now in 2026, I understand that as a fractal of the divine light, of the great source of all that is, that I too am in this point of remembering the totality of who I truly am. That is a spark of all that is. And with this idea of fractalization, whether it's this lifetime, past lifetimes, or future lifetimes, I just wanted to understand a little bit more about this merging and union of me with my higher self. So I put together a little slideshow to help demonstrate a little bit about what I've been thinking about as the new year begins. I wanted to share this image by Matthias Grunewald. It's a little portion of what's called the Isenheim altarpiece. It was painted in 1512 of the resurrected Christ. And for me, this portal or gateway of 2026 with the resurrected human, the divine and the human coming together is all part of the Quantum Soul Guidance's banner this year of the remembering. Yes, ancient codes and cosmic currents guiding us all towards the new human. That new human is something I believe within us, not outside of us. And so this gorgeous, light-filled orb of the resurrection is this idea of, yes, the second coming, but it's also more of it's an inside us instead of externally driven. So I hope that you enjoy this piece as we launch into a little mini slideshow. Can't go too far in my journeys without remembering this quintessential masterpiece by the French artist Paul Gauguin. He painted this towards the beginning of the 1900s. It was the late 1800s, but he moved away from France and his family obligations to go to Tahiti, where for him it was like rediscovering what it's like to be back in the garden and to live amongst the indigenous peoples. Paul at this time was rather ill and thought he was dying. So in the throes of the thought that, okay, what am I going to leave behind? This masterful painting came to being, and it is called Where Do We Come From? What Are We? And Where Are We Going? So, in this idea of remembering, the remembering of our fuller total selves, I just called upon this image by Gauguin. The central figure, of course, is reaching up to collect either a fruit or a flower, kind of reminding us of the Genesis story of Adam and the apple. On the other side of the painting, we see a young woman who can be like the archetype of Eve. Sitting next to her is the grandmother image, right? Almost like contemplating the leaving of the physical body. So you have that contraposition of the youthful feminine next to the crone or the wise woman ready to greet the next chapter. But in celebration of the new human, on the other side of the painting, we see the birth of the new baby and the circle of women watching carefully over the child with a dog and animals echoing the birth of Christ. These are archetypal images that Gauguin painted as a return to the garden. Now, I bring up this word, the garden, as a metaphor and an archetype, but certainly this connection of man, woman with Mother Nature. And fascinatingly enough, Gauguin would include statuary or images of the unseen realms in many of his works. So we see this idea of the ancient relic of an archetype of perhaps a star family, leaving echoes of its journey here on the earth. So I wanted to share this as a way to start beginning and looking back in time to know where we are. And of course, the second question that Paul asked was, what are we? And that's the fun part of 2026. I believe there's going to be these cosmic explosions and ignition points throughout the year and into that following 2027 and beyond, where light codes are going to be opening in us for those who are raising our frequency and tuning into the divine and the cosmic realms. So my whole talk will be focused around a new dawn rising. Yes, we've heard of the lighthouses, be the light within the group. A new dawn, an era is rising in 2026 as the fire horse, the year of the fire horse in the Lunar New Year, is basically merging with Pegasus, who's asking us to be called into inspiration to co-create. Now, you might ask, why Pegasus? But for me, before I go there, I wanted to give you this image of the horses, the freedom, the winged one with fire. So air and fire working together as the elements that support one another to bring the new dawn forward. In the Gregorian calendar, we celebrate the 1st of January as the beginning of our new calendar year. And yet the lunar year represents the spring, when spring begins. And so here I go. This idea of the age of Pegasus. Many of us have tracked the idea that, yes, we were in the age of Pisces, and we wonder, are we in the age of Aquarius yet or not? And it's this toggle point. And how do we define an age? Well, many of us are tuning into the great work of Pam Gregory, astrologer, and she talks about whoever holds the 0 degrees Aries point. This is from an astrological view of the heavens. So we on Earth looking up into the heavens, the 0 degrees Aries point is the creator point. It's the beginning of the new cycle. And so who sits at the 0 degrees Aries point is none other than the constellation of Pegasus. So that's why I wanted to bring in the fire horse with the winged horse. So to look at the heavens, here's an old star constellation chart. And if you're new to astrology or if you're new to astronomy, the idea that the sun has a path in the heavens that we call the ecliptic. And so when you follow the dashed lines, you'll see that we can see, oh, there's Taurus, there's Gemini, here's Pisces, and then Aquarius. But this circle that I've placed is circling around the constellation of Pegasus. I have another slide for you. This is for the Northern Hemisphere. So I'm zooming in again. And what we see is Pegasus is very close to the constellation of Andromeda. In fact, it shares a star. The navel of the horse and the head of Andromeda share the star Alpheratz. But I don't want to get ahead of myself. I'm still looking at the pathway of the sun and how we have created a zodiac. The zodiac, the term basically is a parade of animals that the sun follows and moves into in our year, our solar year. But we don't consider Pegasus to be one of the zodiacal signs. And yet that 0 degrees Aries point is landing in the constellation of Pegasus. So here we're zooming into Pegasus a little bit more so. And I've put together, yes, here's the stars in the heavens that form that beautiful Pegasus or Pegasus square, right? With 4 major stars. We're seeing it, yes, upside down because, the Earth, it rotates and it moves around the solar system. But Pegasus is being born with his other sibling, right? But we don't really talk about the other horse. But in this case, it's the Genesis story of Pegasus that I want to talk with you about now, because I think if a star is holding the 0 degrees Aries point, knowing its mythology, knowing its story archetypally helps understand as above, so below. So if if the 0 degrees Aries point, this ignition point, is being held by Pegasus, let's learn more about this beautiful winged horse, different than a unicorn. So I just want to make sure that's clear. There is a constellation in the heavens called Monoceros, which is a unicorn. But this is Pegasus. And let me pause for a minute and tell you a little story about the archetype of this beautiful, um, ethereal, magical horse that carries the lightning bolts of Zeus, the god of Mount Olympus, the ruler, carrying the lightning bolts. This horse has been able to fly up and through all dimensions. It is magic for us here on Earth, and it shows up at very specific times. And so let's learn a little bit more. So, to begin our story, and when you look at some of the ancient texts, this is a drawing from the year 1009. Can you believe it? So, this constellation has been followed and tracked in the heavens for thousands of years. So, we see it in the art. Here is a Radon or Odeon Radon, beautiful charcoal drawing, and we see another fresco next to it. So the story basically is about the horse that helped a hero named Bellerophon, and he was gorgeous. He has his own hero's journey. So for me, when I learned about Bellerophon's story and how he was able to ride Pegasus, with the help of Athena and her magic bridle, it made me feel like this guy is carrying the hero's journey for humanity. And so it's good to remember the role and purpose of the horse, which did not want to be ridden. This was the first being to ride the horse. Later, the human he's half human, half the son of Neptune, wanted to go up to Mount Olympus. And because this angered Zeus, he sent a fly, stung the horse, and the man was thrown. When I share that with you now, I'm reminded that perhaps that was the story in Ancient of Days and myth, the Greek and Roman myth. Today, I think a new story is being born of how do we each work with the energy of Pegasus to ride into different dimensions. If we invite this beautiful constellation, this magical horse to meditate with us, including working with Athena, what might we be able to do as far as killing and slaying our own internal monsters? How we lighten our vibration by letting go of some of the incredible trauma that we've carried with us energetically for so many lifetimes. So interesting to see how these magical beings can help us. So yes, Bellerophon, interesting, right? They share the same father. This is coming to me now, that Neptune created the winged horse Pegasus by basically raping Medusa before she was named Medusa. Like a big wave came over this beautiful temple goddess of Athena's virgins. And because she had had sex, she was turned into Medusa. So no one could look at her anymore without being turned to stone. So let's park that Medusa story aside for a minute. But this beautiful young man and the beautiful horse share the same father, Neptune. So later, when we look at the astrology for 2026, looking at what Neptune is doing and reminding ourselves what wants to be born, kind of less human and divine. What do we want to bring and birth into new creations without having to go back and do the whole hero's journey of slaying the dragons and falling from grace, right? So here I have a slide from astrologyking.com. And if you want to learn more about Pegasus constellation, its key stars, a little bit of the mythos and history of the asterism, check out Astrology King. So the premise is, and I believe that there's a conversation about this happening in the astrology circles that, yes, this age of whoever holds that 0 degrees Aries point, the ignition point. Well, Astrology King says the constellation Pegasus since 1925. 1925, here it is, 2026. That's quite a while ago that we've already, instead of the age of Pisces, had moved and worked with Pegasus when we expand the scope beyond the zodiacal constellations. All right. So if we move into Pegasus, this winged horse has been with us since 1925. Inspiration, a thundering, lightning, and the horse was said to, whenever it pushed its hoof down, it could make water or spring come forward. So interesting, being born of Neptune, yet flying in the air. And so that's why when we look at this constellation, it doesn't have its back legs and tail. It's because it's coming from the waters. And so this idea of the waves and Neptune's horses representing the waves, this is how Pegasus was born, again, with Medusa and Neptune, the slaying of Medusa's head by Perseus, the blood dropping to the water, and the horse springing forth. Actually, two horses springing forth. So here we see, I put in yellow dots, if you look carefully at this image, of the saddle of the horse. Now, these are markers in the heavens to help you find out, where is Pegasus? You know, in the northern sky, where is it today? And the star Kerb, Kerb, again, was carrying that 0 degrees Aries point. Then when we hit 2045, this is according to Astrology King, and I know the debate is up on exactly when and the scope, but let's say the window for the beautiful star Shiat, it's Shiat, is basically carrying, it's the beta Pegasus star, so that's the second brightest star typically in a constellation. This star is carrying, or will carry in 2045. Some say it's already carrying it now. But if you want to see more, here's a little bit more of the stars in the heavens with Pegasus before it moves into Aquarius, right? So the age of Aquarius, we've got the horse between the fish and the Aquarian water bearer. All right, so where is Kerb? Kerb is at 1 degrees Aries, 3 minutes in the year 2000. Today, let's say 2000 to, the year 2000, Shiat was at 29 degrees Pisces, 23 minutes. I believe today in 2026 that it's still at a 29 degrees Pisces point, but by the year 2050, it will hit the 0 degrees Aries, 4 minutes. Pegasus with the beautiful star Shiat. And I put this purple arrow to show you where it's landing. So when you study the constellation of the stars, the location on, if it's an animal figure or a human figure, often helps you tell a little bit more about what that star's energy is about. And Shiat is part of the upper, what is that? The left foot or left, how do you say it? The left foot of the horse. So speed, agility, flight, the 0 degrees Aries is coming, but it's still at that last 29 degrees Pisces. So isn't it interesting? Neptune to air. It's a perfect analogy for Pegasus, born of the father Neptune, moved into the air, the winged horse. It's not the water horse, right? It's the one that took flight and inspired. But this is where I'd like to talk again. I began at the beginning and now here we're at the middle. This idea of the bringers of light, where air and fire, the two modalities working together to really bring forward this amazing blaze of potential inspiration and light in 2026. For me, this is holy fire. These two archetypes of Pegasus and the year of the fire horse, it's all about freedom. and power. You remember Pegasus shares a star with Andromeda, and that is all about freedom before oxygen. So the chained princess, Andromeda, must be free. So some of that divine feminine and freedom with Pegasus is part of this bringing of the light. Also, these ignition points, you're going to hear from many of my colleagues in the Quantum Soul Guidance Summit here in 2026. There is so much to talk about. I, as a painter, just tuned into this idea of what do the horses mean? And what is this holy blaze? And so that's why that I began with Matthias Grunewald and that Isenheim altarpiece of like the resurrected Christ. And I'm saying Christ not from a theological perspective, but as the archetype of follow me. This is what you too can, embrace your own inner divinity and become fully in spirit, inspired. All right, let's talk about that year of the fire horse on 17th of February, 2026. So next month, it'll go through March 3rd, which is the Lantern Festival. So the Lunar New Year is like when spring begins, and it's usually starts on the second new moon of, let's say, our Gregorian calendar after the winter solstice. So they mark the winter solstice, they count 2 second moons, and that is when the Lunar New Year begins. It has a changing date depending on when the dates on the calendar happen. So you see, I don't know, you can look into the mythology of what is it with the 12 zodiacs of the lunar year. So this previous year in 2025, 2026 now, until February 17th, we've been working with the energy of the wood snake. So the snake energy, for me, that held the divine feminine and wood being of nature. So Mother Earth and the divine feminine. The fire horse, however, it's like it's a herd. It's not a singular one, but it's like, let's blaze together as a herd of horses. If you want to know, were you born in the year of another fire horse? The previous date was January 21st, 1966. So that whole year, starting January 21st, 1966, you could be a fire horse. And so here's a little graphic that shows you basically the years, but the actual start date, you have to almost look at when was the winter solstice and count 2 new moons later. Okay. Now I'm finally having fun bringing together the astrology for that new year. And here in the Pacific Standard Time, I'm based in California. The Lunar New Year, I was able to get it at 3:15 a.m. when the sun and the moon both hit basically 28 degrees of Aquarius. So interesting, right? The water bearer and the beautiful Lunar New Year. So that's how we see where we are and look at the lineup. The lineup is pretty astonishing. Now, I know Pam Gregory likes to add in Sedna and a few of the other Kuiper Belt objects, but I know that some of my other colleagues will be perhaps talking about that in their presentations. For me, I thought I would just really keep it simple, but you can see this whole it's basically all of these planets coming together. They're moving and changing into new signs. Things are just rather auspicious, but our 0 degrees Aries point, look at that. Saturn and Neptune, 0 degrees of Aries on the 17th of February, along with the Lunar New Year. So Neptune, god of the ocean, of creation, of water, is really coming up. You see that whole connection with Pegasus, Neptune, Bellerophon, and now here working with the 0 degrees Aries point. For me, I'm just going to pause for a moment. And when I tune into what does that marker mean? For me, it feels like Neptune, cosmic love, higher Christ consciousness, working with Saturn, time, dreaming in a new timeline. starting with the new start codon and let's say gene keys methodology. Like, let's get things moving and igniting and working with, let's say, a fire horse. So if you would like to get your free, it's a mini galactic astrology report and chart, you can visit Julia's site at galacticastrochart.com, or you can visit her at juliabalaz.com and find your way to the free calculator. So this is a graphic I pulled as a practitioner from her calculator. And you can see I've put a little red arrow to where Pegasus, this beautiful star, Shiat, is just right there at the 0 degrees Aries point of 29 degrees 44 minutes on February 17th. So we've got about a month, right, to get ready for this an additional ignition point. So I wanted to show that. And it's interesting how the stories of the stars, there's one predominant theme coming in, and that's where I put these little glyphs. We've got Pegasus, we've with the star Shiat. We have Algol carrying in the Perseus constellation the head of Medusa, right? The mother of Pegasus, the transformation. It's all about, you know, when people saw her, they would turn to stone. There's something that's going to be transforming us once we're like in one form, and then we'll move to the next suddenly. So we've got Algol working with Uranus. Don't look at the house position necessarily or the ascendant, because this is a chart I created just for my California time. So we're really tuning in onto the moment of February 17th. At the top of the chart, we have Alphard in the large constellation of Hydra, the water snake. This star is going to be exactly opposite our sun and moon. It'll be opposite, creating this beautiful axis or portal. And so, what does it mean? This is the ancient divine feminine wanting to come back more so online with this PowerPoint, working with the fire horse. So, if you thought you've been doing your divine feminine masculine rebalancing, there's another level of experience, is what it feels like. We also, if we continue around the wheel, we've got a centaur, Chiron, some say, working with Beta Centauri Hadar, conjoining Lilith at the time of this new year. Yes, the priestly centaur, the one that is teaching, working with the dark shades and shadows of Lilith. So from the shadows comes the healing point, is what it feels like to me. And then if you keep going around the circle, we do have Jupiter's eagle, Altair, working or lighting up the constellation of Aquila and conjoining basically in aspect to Pluto. So as we transform and go into our deep, deep, deep self, like the toroid, the further we go in, deep, 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 into basically the levels of hell, Hades, the things that we don't want to see, we've got Jupiter's eagle, the light and the air coming back online. So it is auspicious. We hold this gently, but it's like, tell us the story for this now moment. The last star, just briefly, is Achernar. Achernar is sitting and conjoining. Let's see, it looks like, conjunct right next to Mercury. So our conversations, our thinking is all about how to hold this beautiful river at the end of the river, how to work with crises, how to be ready for the unexpected, how to be ready for that constant flow of change. So let's see if we can put all the tea leaves together. I'm going to go around the wheel, starting with Pegasus. On the 17th of February, 2026, basically around 3:15 in the morning, Pacific Standard, the beautiful winged horse who carries the lightning bolts of Zeus will basically offer us an opportunity, if we're ready, to ride Pegasus and ascend to other realms beyond that which we know on Earth. And we're blessed by Pegasus's mother, Medusa, in her transformed state. Yes, thank you, with all the serpent hair. That's what I used to be afraid of, and it no longer freezes me. I'm able to work with, okay, recognizing the trauma and blessing it and letting it move through me. And that idea of the snake energy, the divine feminine. Yes, thank you, Alphard, for bringing you're like one of the oldest, well, the oldest and biggest constellations in the sky, Hydra, working with the star that stands alone. So it's in the darkest part of the night sky is Alphard. It's okay. We have to do this work, internally and by ourselves. But then we come out and we work through the toroid and we bless it with, let's say, Chiron's work. We've gone deep into the shadow and we can call upon Altair, the eagle of Jupiter, to help us move through the energies and ascend and receive our rightful place. Once we sit at our rightful place, some say sovereignty, some say sit on your throne of self knowing. Once we sit well within ourselves, when the river of Eridanus brings us that star Achernar, we'll be talking and helping support others who might need a little help balancing in the frenetic energies. So, the Lunar New Year, several of the cosmic alliances that you may want to consider meditating with or tuning into and seeing how it relates on your own personal chart. Here I've created again, this is a chart cast for February 17th, 2026. And the key star players for this moment that will guide us in the new year include Algol. This is the head of Medusa in Perseus constellation. And Algol will be conjunct Uranus in Taurus. So Algol is at 26 degrees, 32 minutes. And Uranus in Taurus will be at 27 degrees, 32 minutes. So this idea that it's basically 1 degree orb of a conjunction, so pretty tight. And when we're working with those outer planets like Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, think about from our perspective on Earth, how far out these planets are, and to be 1 degree orb of conjunction, that's pretty strong of a marker. So what does it mean? So Taurus representing the earth, Uranus, this electric air energy. So earth changes suddenly, but with Algol, yes, as Pam Gregory mentions, people will be losing their heads. And in that sense, I think about the brain, the left and right hemispheres. And so if we're going to lose our heads, I would say that the overemphasis on the left brain is going to take backseat to now this right brain of the receptive yin energy. So yin yang, feminine, masculine. I think we're going to try and move much more into receptivity as we learn how to navigate in quantum off the linear timeline. Okay. So Algol in Perseus constellation, her transformation required the masculine act of cutting something off. And so it's this physical act of like what needs to be cut off, what cords, what thinking, what patterns of obsessive thinking do I want to just cut off? And instead, as we greet 2026, how will we sit in receptivity more so and tune in to that which wants to come through? All right. So that's Algol. The next batter up for our cosmic play in the new year would be again Pegasus. So born of Medusa and sired by Neptune, god of the sea, springs forth from the blood, from the terror of comes this beautiful horse. Actually, again, there were two horses, but we focus on Pegasus and what the star means. This star, Shiat, holding the 0 degrees Aries point, the creator point, with Saturn and Neptune. It's remarkable. I'll read to you the Saturn will be at 0 degrees 22 minutes, and Shiat will be at 29 degrees 44 minutes of Pisces. So that's a 0 degrees 38 minute orb for Saturn working with Shiat. Neptune at this moment will be at 0 degrees 38 minutes of Aries. My goodness. So it's 54 minutes in conjunction with Shiat. It's so powerful, so close. So let's tune in and receive on the feminine right side of the brain, the receptivity of this powerful star Shiat in the leg of the horse. You know, this multidimensional magical horse of inspiration who can, with the foot, pound the earth and up comes water, the springs of innovation. In fact, those springs carry the muses of inspiration. There's 9 muses, so they're connected to this beautiful horse. So let's see, Saturn, structure and time, Neptune, king of the sea. Yeah, it feels like there's family issues that are going to come to light to be resolved. This idea of Neptune and Saturn, Chronos, time will change. Our way of seeing time and being in time will change, but the workings with the creative function of Neptune and the cosmic, loving, heart-centered space. So we greet the new through our heart chakra. The third key player in these cosmic alliances for the Lunar New Year is Altair in the constellation of Aquila. So Aquila is the eagle, Jupiter's eagle. So we're talking about flight and the highest levels of Mount Olympus, with this idea of the king of Mount Olympus, the top ruler of Olympus, conjoining with Pluto in Aquarius. Well, let me give you those dates or those orbs. Pluto in Aquarius will be at 4 degrees 12 minutes, and there's a 2 degree 4 minute conjunction with Altair. So a little wider orb, but still the potency is there. This eagle flying in. So if Pegasus carries Zeus or Jupiter's lightning bolts, and the eagle carries the messages from the gods, when we go deep, deep in with Pluto into the deep inner realms, working with Pluto and the Aquarian, transformation, energetically, genius-like, new innovations, huge spiritual, cosmic, celestial downloads are potentially available to all of us with the fire horse energy. In case you're wondering, if you're like me and you like to see the data, this is a chart pulled from Julia Balaz and the Quantum Soul Guidance Calculator at galacticastrochart.com. This is way more information than you probably want, but it helps to underscore that it's not just those 3 players. There's so much more happening in the celestial heavens to support each of us. There's the super galactic center. There's just tons of very potent connections. Who is working with Jupiter? Well, we've got Sirius A, B, and C, right? That connection to the pyramids of Giza, to this high intellect, Jupiter in Cancer in the 10th house. So again, we're working with metaphor and story. And I almost didn't want to show you this chart, but I thought for those of you who are interested, there is more than you can imagine available to us. And I see these soul connection points as not what's stronger, what's weaker, but it's all part of the fabric of this now moment. And when you actually get to see your own chart, by having a reading or learning to take a free report from the calculator, it's like, wow, I finally get to understand where I've been, who's here to help me, and where am I going and who wants to come with me. So all those questions kind of come up during this pivotal time of the fire horse and working with Pegasus. So here's the star Merkaba. I've done this before in class where we put our baby self or our young child self in the center, and then we call in 12 points of light who will assist us in this new year. So I'm happy to meet with 33 of you, 33 being the master number of the cosmic Christ consciousness. So I'm embracing Neptune. Here's something that I created. I found images with the help of Google Image, but this template was created by a wonderful quantum soul guidance colleague, Kelly Brett, and we just kind of evolved and worked together to put together a format or a template so I could gaze and meditate upon my 12 helpers for the year. And again, I'm at the center as the 13th, and then there's 12 around me. So if this is something that you're interested in doing, a little art project where I'll guide you to discover 12 guides that are at a celestial point. You may already know 6 of them. You might work with ascended masters or angelic realms or other. If you want to know some of your star families, conjunctions, or oppositions, by sharing your birth information with me, I'll call up a chart and we'll go ahead and identify some for you to play with in this beautiful energy of 2026. I think that there is this moment now where more and more we're coming online with more senses than our 5, taste, smell, touch, visual, etc. That we're, as we move into with these galactic energetics, the potential for contact is here, and contact usually begins in our dream time. So if you already are sensing and feeling and knowing more, it's so important to ground ourselves with Mother Earth, ground ourselves in a meditation or a daily practice of silence, of going inward with prayer. I do want to give a shout out to my friend, Alan Steinfeld. He brought a group of us through an advanced remote viewing class through the Shift Network. And in the 12 classes of advanced remote viewing, it wasn't about what did you see, but it was more about creating a small group that could help me validate my intuitive knowing and sensing. In other words, when we focused on a target, I could see that my way of seeing things without my eyes was much more in the symbolic, archetypal, energetic of the core essence of an object or a place or a person. So I just love the Sabian symbols. And so this kind of helped me see that my love for what I typically pick up and feed on helps me see this is what's going to be growing in me in the year 2026. And that's where I want to end. Yes, the remembering ancient codes and cosmic currents, guiding each of us as we embrace ourselves as the new human. And once we do that, we form these little constellations or small hubs with like-hearted other souls. So I want to encourage you to find a small group that is heart-based, that feels like the same frequency as you, because it's not just about the singular human, but this constellation and these various pods that then form a greater solar light logos. So it's this lighting up ourselves, one another, humanity, and then the collective, that then Gaia then steps in and receives her rightful place within the cosmos at the center of our hearts. So if you're ready to remember, if you're ready to understand what you are as a multidimensional being, and if you want to chart a course for this next 12 months in the Lunar New Year, join me. You can also find me on my YouTube channel, The Ascension Playground, where I talk about all things galactic, astrological, and metaphysical to help each of us lighten up. Take care, everybody, and thank you so much for this opportunity to be part of the 2026 Global Summit.